Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Southern California housing market update. This is for October 12th, 2021. I can't believe it. We are in Q4 of 2021. We made it. My name is Stephen Mead. I'm the principal broker here at Domicile Real Estate for people who love houses. And something I want to talk a little bit about today, it's funny, sometimes clients or people in the industry say things to you and it really makes you think about something that maybe you've been overlooking. And I was giving some thoughts today about, how to make decisions in the upcoming market. And one of the things we do when we show these stats is that we combine Los Angeles and Orange counties. And there's a reason why we do that. That's a pretty broad area, right? Los Angeles and Orange County, we actually try to divide it by under a million of 1 to 2 million so that we kind of give a little bit of meaning to those markets, but those are still very broad markets. And that's actually on purpose. And the reason why it's on purpose is when you are running statistics on a market, you can have very accurate information or very specific information, but you can't have both at the same time. And the reason for that is when those sample sizes start to get too small, the numbers go completely wonky and they're meaningless to you. So, for example, if you wanted to know what is the median sales price in your neighborhood of 100 houses, well, how many houses in your neighborhood sell a year? Well, probably 5 to 10 houses. So you can see if you run that statistic every week, what if one house was a really lousy house with no upgrades, right? Or that was in bad shape? Then the next house that sells is a highly upgraded house. Did your median home price in your neighborhood really double in a 2-month period? No, it didn't. But the stats might be misleading. And the reason why I'm mentioning this is we are going into what I think is going to be what I call a non-homogenous market. When inventory is super tight and when the market is going like gangbusters, right? When that happens, you end up with kind of this universal tide that sort of lifts all boats. But whenever you have any kind of stress on that marketplace, right? That being interest rates going up, right? Or I'm trying to think of something else that can happen, or high unemployment, or any number of reasons. What you notice is that market that essentially, for all intents and purposes, kind of moves as one unit, that starts to break down a little bit. And the biggest breakdown really comes geographically. And I know I've talked about this a little bit before. The most important market information is the market that you are buying in. But I want to circle back to that because any way that you can slice up a market, right? Whether it's by area, by price, by level of, is it a fixer-upper or a turnkey house? Is it a condo or a single family? Any way that you can slice that market up, we may start to see some bigger differences in how those market segments are behaving. Now, our broad market statistics are still useful. Think of those as kind of a baseline, and then you can adjust that baseline based on what's happening in your individual market that you're interested in, which, by the way, is another great reason to reach out to real estate professionals that know what they're doing, because they tend to know what's happening within those individual market segments. But this non-homogenous market means you're going to have to do a little bit of extra work. You're going to have to understand why, one house might get 25 offers on it and one house might only get 1 offer on it or 0 offers, right? And it's not just which one was overpriced. Desirability may actually start to come into play for significant market differences. So this is one of those moments where I tell people, start paying attention, right? We're entering into a generally slower time of year, but you're going to see in the stats, generally means exactly that, generally. So let's get into it because I want to go through these before the sun goes down. I know it's a little bit later today. All right, let's start off here. What are we looking at? Total active listings in the marketplace. Well, we're seeing what we've talked about for a couple weeks now, which is just this gradual decline in inventory as we head towards the end of the year. This is totally normal. We're still above where we started the year, in inventory, but my prediction is that we will end, at a lower level. And again, our blue line is under $1 million, and our red line is $1 to $2 million. So a little bit more of that luxury or higher end market segment. So we're going to expect to see this kind of continue. But what's interesting about this, right, is what we really have to do is compare this to kind of that supply and demand narrative and that relationship between them. So if we're looking at what are the homes coming on the market, well, our luxury segment has been remarkably steady, right? I mean, this one doesn't move around nearly as much, but look what's happening here under $1 million. This entry level market segment, we're just not seeing a lot of new homes coming onto the market, in this market segment. Look at this level where we're at, right? We flirted with this kind of 3,000 units number over the past 2 weeks, but that's where we were back in January. So, understand that is driving a lot of that competitiveness that we're seeing out there in the fall. Now, I'm going to go to the next graph because there's kind of an interesting market phenomenon for Southern California. So, our listing season is pretty obvious here, right? Like May, April, June, July, these are big listing markets. Then we get to August and things start dropping off. That's pretty normal. That's pretty typical. But look at the shape of this for new escrows. This kind of peaks in the spring, and then it's just this much more gradual taper here. Buyers and sellers have very different habits, especially in this entry-level market segment of under $1 million. My theory on why that is, because people always like to ask why, is that this market segment has a lot of families with smaller children, at least school-age children in that segment. What do people with children not want to do? They don't want to sell during the middle of the school year. That's the reason why through the spring, those new listings are strong, and through the summer, and then it tapers off in the fall. But the buyers in this segment, those buyers have a different set of priorities, right? Those buyers frequently don't have children yet. They'll buy a house anytime. And in fact, sometimes those buyers like that the market is a little less competitive typically in this fall period. So we just don't see that drop off of buyers like we do with sellers. And now what happens? What happens if sellers are dropping off, but buyers aren't? Well, we start ending up with a graph that looks like this. We are into the 90s. Look, this is our under $1 million demand. Very strong, pretty much all summer, kind of dips a little as we get to July through August, and it started climbing back up again. And here we are over 90%. This is a very, very competitive market if you are a buyer in that under $1 million segment. Now, our luxury market, that's a little bit softer, but there's a decent amount of swing in this luxury market and, just week to week variations. But let's look at the trend line. That's still above 80. That's stronger than we were back in June and July for this luxury market. So kind of take note of that our Southern California market, and this is typical, is frequently a lot stronger in October to early November than it was in August. That's just sort of the kind of the way it is in our market. We don't have nearly the kind of weather related decline in market as they do like in the Midwest or other places where it gets cold. So if we're looking at our prices here, again, especially in this luxury 75th percentile end of the market, also as a reminder, we're looking back 4 to 6 weeks on this data. We see the market looks like it's been a little soft on the high end. It's kind of had some gentle rises over here in our median. And that entry-level market has also seen some slowly rising numbers. We've talked about this term before. I call it inflationary increases, meaning, the home prices basically are going up by about the amount of inflation at that rate. Now, if you look at our still active percentage, excuse me, our still active percentage, this is sort of a very baseline measurement of market competitiveness. If you look, the market was the most competitive. Lower is more competitive on this chart. So if you look here, boy, that March period was really sort of this just real rough spot for home buyers. Things have gotten a little bit better, but then they've kind of plateaued, even reduced a little bit. And that really mirrors kind of anecdotally what we've seen in the market. that late August is a little bit softer, and then things start getting a little bit more competitive again. Still not nearly as bad as we were in the spring, right? We're not in that springtime market, but still a very competitive market. Now, if we look at our list to close ratio, what is this doing? Exactly what we expected. Finally, seller expectations of what they're going to get for their house are coming back to being close to what buyers are willing to pay. When you see this number get close to 100%, that means those expectations are in balance. When it is way over 100%, it means that buyers are much farther along than sellers in terms of what they're willing to pay. I expect that this number probably will get close to 100% by the end of the year. I'm expecting this number to continue to go downward. I think sellers have figured out they can kind of price their house for whatever, and people will come see it. Now we have our days on market, and we've been watching this kind of closely for a little while. I think some of you have been saying is these numbers, especially under 1 million, when they started to rise up, you said, this is it. This is the beginning of the end. And I told you, I don't think that's true. I don't think this is the beginning of the end. This is very typical in fall for this number to go up a little bit, especially as we get into that non-homogenous market. Again, basically that means in a non-homogenous market, certain houses will be very, very hot and other houses will not. Generally speaking, the houses that you want to buy will be the ones that are the hottest. Other people, if you like a house and you think it's awesome, other people probably think the same way too. And what that means as we enter this non-homogenous market is that this is going to go up a little bit. But look at where these numbers are, folks. I mean, we're at 22 days on market for under 1 million. We're at like 25, 26 days for our 1 to 2 million. Things may have gotten a little easier, but they're not easy. This is not a soft market. So I think if you look at these graphs and you think we're in a soft market, sorry if you're a buyer, that's just not true. Now, if you're a seller, what does this non-homogenous market mean for you? It means that you might think this average days on market for new contracts. What that means is 20% of these listings will have days on market that are like 7, and the rest of them will have days on market that are like 30, right? You want to be in that 7 category if you're a seller, right? So prepping your house, good marketing, those things are all very, very important right now. Now, finally, we're going to look, or second to finally, we're going to look at our affordability. And I do want to take a note. This number has gone up a little bit, right? And we are now firmly at around 115%. It's a little bit higher than we've been trending the last few months, but not as high as it was in kind of this April period. I am seeing wage growth. I think economically, we're seeing wages improve and go up. And when you have that wage growth, that can fuel a little bit of price growth. So, versus 2018, we're still trending around 115%. I don't think this is outlandish affordability figures, given where I think wage growth is happening. And finally, we're going to talk about interest rates. So we've been talking for a couple of weeks. We said, well, it was this 1/8 of a percentage jump in 1 week. Was that indicative of a problem and a market rates that were going to just race up? You'll notice we were almost to 3.25% back here in April, but look what's happened. It jumped a little bit, and then now it's just kind of hovering right around that 3% number. Well, we spent pretty much all the months of May, June, and part of July right around 3%. So really not an outlandish number. California Association of Realtors says that they think this interest rates are going to go to 3.7% by next year. That sounds reasonable to me. I don't think anybody really knows where rates are going to go by next year, but it's a nice educated guess. I think if it happens fairly slowly, I don't think we're going to see a lot of negative effects on demand if those rates move in kind of a slower fashion. I think if rates go to 4% in a 30-day period, that could have an effect on demand, a significant effect on demand. Anyhow, that's all I got for you guys this week. Thank you so much for watching. If you have real estate questions or comments, we love those. Definitely put those in there. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. And then we have our other videos which come out later this week, our window shopping video, as well as our first-time buyer market-specific update. That comes out on Friday of this week. Anyhow, thanks so much for watching, everybody. We'll see you again real soon.